Leadership in this new era that I've been talking about is going to have to be different. In many different organizations and enterprises in Canada, we find that they have just dumped more work on their leadership and on their employees and set in place all kinds of new systems and so on and so forth. But that doesn't work because people can only do so much in a day and they get frustrated when too much is asked of them. So what we need to be doing is focusing our efforts more. Clergy have been well trained in the past to act as pastors, and I'm confident in the clergy of the Diocese of Huron. I'm confident that they are very good pastors who have the ability to sit with people in their times of need and comfort them in their times of sorrow and all of those different things. But what we need to do is to sharpen our skills of leadership. We need to train and retrain clergy and laity alike for their work. We need to give them the tools that they need to face this new era, and we need to help them become energized. One of the other things we need to do is to make sure that we have the best fit possible between clergy skills and congregational needs. Not every congregation is going to need exactly the same skills and abilities from their priest, and it will be important for us to match congregations with their clergy in a much more intentional kind of way. We will be inviting clergy into a process of doing some more planning around their continuing education, and hopefully this will be an exciting thing for them. The third focus of the strategic vision and redirection is the effective use of resources. The Who is My Neighbor report has helped us to understand from a demographic perspective where our strengths and weaknesses lie. For many, this report was very difficult to take. Many congregations were termed as final generation congregations, and that put fear in our hearts about the eventual closing of our churches. Some even believed that to be labeled a final generation church meant that your church would be closed by the diocese at some point in the near future. This plan is not and has never been about closing churches, but we will be working with congregations that are struggling in order to take positive action and redirection before they are forced to by the circumstances of their lives. We will also be working with congregations where we see great hope and great possibilities for the future, in order that we will be able to be the very best that we can be for the Lord. Another aspect of this focus is the need for the diocese to develop a financial strategy for the future. I will be a part of the committee that is working on developing such a strategy, and in times ahead, the diocese will be hearing more about this matter.
We have heard Richard's calling to this position. We have learned of the engagement of the strategic plan. And now we hear, with some passion I might add, Richard's vision of the way forward.
We've talked a great deal about coming out of exile. And part of coming out of exile for the Jews was the rediscovery of their relationship with God. In the 8th chapter of Nehemiah, the people gathered together while Ezra the priest read to them from the book of the law they had found. The people were weeping on that day because they were so moved by the word of the Lord. But Nehemiah said to them, "Go and enjoy choice food and sweet drinks, and send some to those who have nothing prepared. This day is sacred to our Lord. Do not grieve, for the joy of the Lord is your strength." Certainly, spiritual renewal and spiritual invigorment is an important part of any plan that will move us to the future. Now I know that for some people, whenever we talk about spiritual renewal, antennas start to go up. It brings up questions about whether or not it will be liberal in its leaning or conservative. The last decades of the Church have been very consumed by discussions and even arguments and disagreements between those that call themselves liberals and those that call themselves conservatives. It has gone even further than simple disagreement. It has gone to the point of different groups wondering who will be able to win this battle and who will ultimately take over the church. That's a kind of a form of triumphalism, and it really has no place in our midst as a Christian community. It is not the way forward for the Church. Personally, I'm well known as having conservative views. They've never affected my ability to function well as an archdeacon. I think that's because, first of all, I am an Anglican and have always been an Anglican, and have understood the value of differing opinions and how those differing opinions can help us all to grow. Well, what kind of change are we then talking about? What kind of spiritual renewal? I would think of three things that come to mind immediately. The first is membership to discipleship. The second would be contribution to commitment. And the third would be inward thinking to outward thinking. When I think about membership becoming discipleship, I think about the fact that we are very good in considering ourselves to be members of congregations. In fact, we are really often quite committed to the life of the church family in which we find ourselves. But Jesus called us not to be members, but rather instead to be disciples, to be people who are prepared to pick up and walk away just to follow him, not even knowing where he was going to take us. When I think of talking about contribution to commitment, there's an old story which I'm going to tell about a chicken and a pig. There once was a chicken and a pig who were discussing how to solve the problems of world hunger. And the chicken had an idea, and the pig had an idea, and nothing seemed to be really coming together until the chicken said, "Hey, wait a minute, I've got it. I know what we'll do. We'll feed the world with bacon and eggs." There was a moment of silence before the pig responded, and then he said, "I don't think so." And the chicken said, "Well, why not? We've got all we need. We can produce the bacon and we can produce the eggs." And the pig said, "Well, you see, you don't seem to understand. For you, that's just a contribution. But for me, it's total commitment." Well, to be honest, as the church moves forward, we don't need a bunch of chickens. We need people who are prepared to totally commit themselves in a radical kind of way to following Jesus Christ. The third thing I talked about was inward thinking to outward thinking. When I was growing up, the mission field was something that was thousands of miles away. The reality about today is that the mission field is right next door to us. It's in our neighborhood and in our communities. When I was growing up, we didn't think of that as a mission field. Well, times have changed, and the church is only one generation away from extinction. If we're not prepared to reach out to the community around and to proclaim the good news that we have been made caretakers of, then the church will die. We have talked a fair bit about the concept of returning from exile. And the first thought we have when we think about returning from exile is that this is a joyous and a wondrous time, and people return with joy and dancing. But if we read the whole story of the people returning from exile in Babylon back to the Promised Land and to Jerusalem, we realize that there were very many difficult moments along the way. And I wouldn't want to pretend that all the things we need to do as church in the Diocese of Huron are going to be easy and resolved in a moment. They are going to take patience and hard work and probably a little bit of retooling and rethinking of the plan along the way. But to all who want to follow Jesus, I say, let's join hands together and walk together with the Lord. As Isaiah said, "Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?"
The challenge has been placed before us. As we move to Synod 2011 and into our future, we are called as one to dream, to vision what we can be, how we can engage the culture, how we can be part of the new thing God is doing in our midst.
Let go.